or Sea Grant research website where the RFP is. So if you want to go back and review anything, or for those people who aren't able to join today, they'll be able to see the recording of this Zoom. I'm LaDon Swan. I'm the director for the Mississippi-Alabama Sea Grant Consortium. On the Zoom with me, besides all the people interested in the RFP, is Loretta List, who's our research coordinator, Debney Sheremy, who's our fiscal officer. If you submit a proposal or a pre-proposal, you'll get to know them very well over the next several weeks. And Steve Sempier, who's our deputy director, as well as our outreach director. What we want to accomplish today is to provide you with just a thumbnail of the process that we use to obtain proposals, pre-proposals, and proposals, and then spend the rest of the time on the calls to try to answer questions that you might have of us. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Loretta. She has a short presentation she's going to share with you, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, give me 1 second, get everything pulled up. Okay, so we're here to talk about the 2022-2024 research program. Let me see, how do I do the next slide here? Here we go. Okay, just a few things we want to emphasize before we get too into the details. You must submit a pre-proposal in order to submit a full proposal. Full proposals that are not aligned with a pre-proposal will be disqualified. The priorities are described in detail in the RFP. We're not going to go into that in this presentation, but we will address any questions that you have on the priorities today. And we are looking for research for this competition. So proposals should have clear and testable hypotheses and should be in general research oriented. Outreach proposals are not welcome for this competition, and outreach activities will be addressed in a separate activity if your project is funded. We'll go into just a little bit of detail about that in a little bit. And lead investigators need to be from universities and colleges in Mississippi and Alabama, and but we do encourage that co-PIs, that you use co-PIs in both Mississippi and Alabama, and include partners for other agencies and proposals that are interdisciplinary in nature. The priorities in the RFP align with our strategic plan, and the activities include 4 focus areas. The focus areas are healthy coastal ecosystems, sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, resilient communities and economies, and environmental literacy and workforce development. We are looking to fund projects that are 1 or 2 years in length. The maximum request is $75,000 per year. And as mentioned before, PIs must be from a university in Alabama or Mississippi, but co-PIs can be from other universities and colleges or nonprofits or businesses or local governments. We require a 50% match, and examples of match are in-kind salary, waived indirect costs, and cash. Our fiscal officer, Debney Sheremy, is here with us today, and she can answer any budget questions you have. And while you're writing your proposals, you will want to address any budget or budget form questions to her. This is the pre-proposal review criteria. Rationale is 25%, merit is 45%, and user involvement and expected impacts and application results is 20%. Investigator qualifications is 10%. I want to point out that the review criteria at the full proposal, which I don't think I have a slide that talks about it, are slightly different than this. So you want to be careful if you're going to submit a full proposal to make sure that it is outlined, that you use the criteria that is outlined in the full proposal guidance that we will send out as soon as we notify all the PIs. For the pre-proposals, each proposal will be assigned to 2 panelists to review. The panel will meet and discuss and decide as a group to either encourage or not encourage full proposals from each PI. Review comments are sent to all the PIs so that they can use them as suggestions on how they can improve their full proposal should they submit one, or they can use their comments to improve their proposals for future competitions. If you are not encouraged, it does not mean that you are not allowed to submit a full proposal. Full proposals are sent out to review for 1 to 3 peer reviewers. They are also reviewed by 2 panelists, so each proposal receives 3 to 5 reviews. The panel will meet and discuss each full proposal, and it places them in a fundable or not fundable category. And the proposals that are placed in the fundable category are reviewed by our advisory council. The advisory council will see only your abstract and the title of your proposal if they're in the fundable category. They do not see the names of the PIs, and the job of the advisory council is to determine which of the fundable proposals align with the local priorities. The pre-proposals need a signed commitment form, which is basically just our cover form. I see a lot of new names here today, so I'm glad I'm going over some of this. PIs who have submitted to us before will recognize the form as our cover form. Basically, that just ensures that your university is supportive of your project and any match that you put in your budget. There is a narrative form in EC Grant, which is several fields that you'll need to fill in: focus area, rationale, objectives, methodology, expected impacts, partners list, and literature cited. The partners and the literature cited are not included in the 1,000-word limit. You will need to download a budget form from EC Grant and fill it out and upload it into EC Grant. And you will need to upload a CV for each investigator, and you will need to upload support letters. A quick note on the difference between support letters and commitment letters. I think some people get confused at this. Letters of support are letters that are from your end users, that of your research, people who will use what your results are going to be. It explains how your project will help them in their work, and this is something that you submit with both your pre and your full proposals. Letters of commitment are letters from your university that describes the commitment to the project, much like the cover form, and commitment the university has to your budget and your match in your budget. Pre-proposals are due February 22nd. The portal will close at 5 o'clock. You will not be able to make changes after that deadline. April 19th, we will notify the PIs about the pre-proposals. June 11th, the full proposals are due by 5 o'clock. September 15th are when we hope to have the full proposal, the funding notifications made. I expect that will go out a little earlier. My target is more like the first week of September. Throughout September and October, your outreach plans will be developed for your project. And your project would start about a year from now on February 1st in 2022. So, I mentioned EC Grant before. MASGC uses an online program to manage proposals, reviewers, and project tracking and reporting. In order to use EC Grant, you need to register first in the system. Once you're in, you basically just upload whatever required forms we ask for, and you fill in the narrative form. And I'm going to give just a quick tutorial about EC Grant, but I'm going to skip over quite a bit. There's details on the guidance document that is on the webpage for this RFP. I suggest you register early. It is safe, it is quick. We don't use your information for anything other than proposals and reviews and project management. If you have any questions or problems registering or using EC Grant, I basically am on standby during proposal season to make sure that you're able to get done your proposals in a timely manner. So I will respond very quickly to anything that you need. Just drop me an email or a phone call. Before you start your proposal, I like it if people go into, there'll be a button at the top right when you log in. I'm not going to show you that today, but there is a place to fill out your information, such as your address and affiliation. That helps me. I like for you to do it. Some of the things that I want to point out before we start is that the PI can go ahead and start your proposal, submit a proposal, but the PI can also assign a delegate to work on the proposal. Delegates need an EC grant account first. And as soon as they have the account, the PI can go into their proposal and select to assign a delegate and find you in the database and select the delegate. And then that person will have access to the proposal and can work on the proposal with the PI. This process is described in much more detail in the guidance document that's on the website. So I'm not going to go into it, but if you have any questions, I am very happy to assist you. If you're submitting more than one proposal, you do not need to register twice. So you will have access to all your proposals through your account that you make. When you register and log in, you will end up on this page. There'll be some things here on the left, but I wanted to highlight that I am hosting 3 competitions right now. And so when you log in, you will have access to 3 different RFPs. You want to make sure that you are applying for the RFP that you mean to be applying for. So make sure for this competition that you are applying for the 2022-2024 research RFP. And then you click over here on the right, add proposal. There are various parts of the EC Grant this EC Grant portal for this competition. These are separate tabs for the commitment form, the budget, the narrative, the investigators, and the support letters. The commitment and the budget form are items where you will download a file and then you will fill it out and then re-upload it. The support letters, you would simply just upload, and the narrative form, you fill out an EC Grant, and the CV form is combined where you fill it out and you upload CVs. This is what the page looks like when you register and then log in. You can navigate by these little tabs here on the left. These are the proposal elements. And this is the page that you end up on. And I want to point out on this particular page that the field, this proposal title field populates the review form. So you want to make sure that this proposal title field is what you want the reviewers to see in this box. You can change this up until the deadline, so don't be afraid to put in a temporary title if you're working on it, and then change it before the deadline. When you go through all these separate tabs that I already described, the last button you want to push is this submission preview tab on the left here. And you will, on this page, you will be able to scroll down and see any information that you have added to your proposal. Make sure your files are the ones you want. Make sure the answers are what you need in each box of the forms. And then you go over here and click submit. You can review your files and click submit at any time. You can upload any files you want until the deadline. If you upload a new file, it will overwrite an old file. So if you want to make any changes at the last minute and you upload a new file, you go ahead and do that. It'll overwrite the old file. You can resubmit anything up until the deadline. And a couple more notes. EC Grant saves what you're doing, so you don't need to do it all in one sitting. You can go ahead and stop and log out if you need to and come back at a later date. Remember to click the submit button when you are done with your proposal. You will receive an email that is automatically generated from EC Grant. You might want to check if you don't get that, make sure that it did not end up in your junk mail. And you can revise your proposal up until the deadline. I mentioned that several times. And as a best management practice, or as a best practice, be sure to click save on each form quite a bit. It's been pretty good about automatically saving, but I don't want you to lose any data that you've inputted. And that's about it. Here's our website. This is the link to EC Grant, and LaDon and Steve are here to address questions about the research priorities. And I'm here to address any questions about any forms or EC Grant, and Devaney is here to talk about any budget questions you may have.
Thank you, Loretta. Before we open it up for questions, I know there are a couple people who have just gotten in. We are recording this and we'll post it on the research RFP page. So the part that you probably missed was talking about EC grant and just an overview of the RFP itself. You'll be able to check that out in the video once we get it uploaded, which will probably be early next week, could be Tuesday. So with that said, I'll open it up for questions. You're welcome to unmute yourself, turn on your video, whatever's comfortable for you, or you can type your questions into the chat box.
Hello, this is Clint Edrington.
Hi, Clint.
My question is, I guess it could be applied to a lot of these, but we're looking at the focus area of healthy coastal ecosystems. It's the second bullet: develop and test methods to evaluate on the ground coastal restoration. And so I guess my question was, do the techniques, methods that we would want to evaluate, do we have to go out to a coastal restoration project and test them, or can we go to, say, another natural setting, apply these methods where they're and come back and report, they're applicable to a coastal restoration project, but maybe one such restoration project doesn't exist right now, or they're just getting going, like, for example, at SAVs in Alabama. I read about there's a project should be underway by now, but it's probably not completed. So I'm sorry, I was kind of rambling, but do we have to go to a restoration project to evaluate these methods, or can we go to a more natural setting and report back that, hey, these are applicable to a restoration site?
Help me understand a little bit more of what you're asking. I think the intent of that was to take a look at completed projects and assessing how effective those restoration methods were, and report on that. Now, some part of that, you probably need a baseline in terms of, well, this is a similar site that hasn't been restored. Here's a site with the same habitat type, for example, and then compare the restored site versus the more natural site. Now, I know a lot of that's been done, but the aim here is to really come out with new knowledge on how to improve restoration practices that then could be shared with groups that fund on the ground restoration. I can use an example that's common, buzzword that everyone likes is living shorelines. There's a lot in the whole word phrase living shorelines and how people determine that, whether they're truly living or some combination of armored with a living component to that. So the goal is, you can submit your letter of intent any way you want, but I do know that what we're looking for is research that would identify what's working and what's not working.
Okay, thanks for that.
Hi, Ladan. This is Kemal Jambazolu from USM. How are you?
Fine.
My question is, well, I have two questions. The first one is, in the pre-proposal instructions, submission instructions, there is a primary focus area and a secondary focus area, if applicable. And Loretta mentioned, the evaluation criteria might change or will change, from pre-proposal to full proposal. So I was wondering, if for the full proposal guidelines, when they come out, do you expect to have the same primary as well as secondary focus area, continuing into full proposals, or only a primary focus area for the actual full proposal?
Yeah, a secondary is, as you said, is an option. You don't have to have a secondary one. Obviously, we're looking to leverage as much as possible. The changes that Loretta's referencing, really, we decreased the weight of rationale and increased the weight of the scientific merit. And excuse me, but the rationale for that is that if you're encouraged to submit a full proposal, then the assumption is that you have a good rationale. So we decrease a little bit of weight on the rationale and add that to the scientific technical merit. I'm not sure. I think it's all, maybe don't hold me to it, but I know there's an increase in the scientific merit. I don't know if there's an increase in some of the others. We have that guidance available, but there's not major changes. It's mostly just a little bit of decrease in the rationale. But to answer your question, you don't have to have a secondary one. If it does cut across, let's say HCE, there's something that might improve or deal with some of the priorities in sustainable fisheries, then you might be able to mention a secondary priority as well, or focus area.
And my second question is, so based on the feedback provided to, the pre-proposal submissions, encourage, discourage, as well as, potential, suggestions, could there be a change in the, investigator list going from the pre-proposal to the full proposal submission, if needed?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, we'd like to think that the same PI would be there. But if you need to add a new co-PI based on feedback or just based on decision that the team would make, then you can add additional co-PIs.
Thank you.
As well as remove co-PIs that you might have had in the letter of intent, or excuse me, pre-proposal.
Hi, my name is Megan Gima. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Megan. Yes.
Hey, in looking at the focus areas listed and bulleted on the pre-proposal RFP, then when I go to the Sea Grant website and it lists out the same focus areas, but the bullet points in below each focused area is slightly different. And I was just trying to match up and make sure we have the correct focus area that we're keying in on. Could we use some of those differences that are on the website that are listed for this RFP, or do they need to align very specifically with the ones that are listed on the pre-proposal call?
My advice to you would be to align them directly with the bullets in the RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Don't be shy. I have all afternoon. The one thing I will point out, if you've already registered for EC grant, you don't have to register again. There is a tab where you can just log in if you've already registered. And if it's been so long ago, if you're like me, you may have lost your password. I think you can create a new password, at least retrieve your password. As Loretta mentioned, there's probably several people on the Zoom this afternoon have never competed for Sea Grant funding. So that's probably, most of you will need to register, but if you have already submitted a proposal through our program, you're probably already in the system.
Hey, LaDon, this is Angelos.
Hi,
I've
Angelo.
submitted. How you doing? I've submitted proposals with Reg in the past, and I don't recall. I think just Reg is the one registered with the SG. So do co-PIs necessarily need to register, or does everything just go through the PI? Would you guys like to see co-PIs register for the website?
Absolutely. I think it would be helpful. I think the key thing is what Loretta mentioned. If you do some of the work in terms of uploading information, and there is a lot of information, not much I can do about that. It is a federal program. If the PI asks the co-PI to help with uploading some of that, then absolutely, you probably want to register as a co-PI, and then some of that would be, then the PI could delegate some of that authority to you. But as far as being in the system, even if you're a co-PI, it's helpful for us, I think, Loretta, because you probably draw from that when you send out funding announcements and other things. So yeah, I see no harm in a co-PI registering, whether you're involved in submitting any of the information or not.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, hi, this is Giro, also from the University of Southern Mississippi. Just to clarify, you said register as a co-PI, but that probably means just register, right? And then take the role as a co-PI. You don't.
That's correct. Just register. Yeah, good point. Just register. Now, if you are the PI, I think that would be, how does that work, Loretta?
So a co-PI can register, and then the PI, if you're going to contribute to EC Grant in the proposal, the PI just selects you as a delegate. So you have to be registered first. Otherwise, your registration, if you're not going to be contributing to the proposal, they don't give you access to it, but you're still in our system for the good of our, knowing who you are and having your address and things like that. So
Yeah, what you want to avoid, I think this is correct. If you register and it turns out you're a co-PI, it's probably not a good idea to start the submission process. That would be the PI who would do that. And then the PI would delegate authority to the co-PI.
PIs can also delegate authority to the sponsored programs, so they can see what you've submitted and approve it and submit it.
That's a good point too.
So it's not just for PIs and co-PIs.
You're welcome to send any of us an email or give us a call if you have a question about the priorities, about the process of submitting a proposal, pre-proposal in this instance, at any point. The contacts are listed in the RFP, both email and phone numbers. No one's dropping off. I'm not going to drop off. If you have questions, feel free to ask.
Well, I will be dropping off, but that was useful. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks, everyone.
Don, thank you guys very much for putting this together.
Absolutely.
Some of us are
Here to send
right. We're relatively new to the process, and we want to, we like you guys encouraging us and helping us through the process as it changes. It's an evolving process. So we appreciate you guys putting this together, and you'll be hearing from us soon.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
You too.
Hello, Don. This is
Yes, sir.
Clint. This is Clint again. And I've been thinking about this question. I thought about maybe I'll just send you an email, but if you don't mind, since we're all online, I'll just think it through and ask you. Because before we go through the and sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm with the Northern Gulf Institute over at Stennis, and we were kind of looking more like at a monitoring approach of methods and techniques to monitor coastal restoration projects. If I understood you right correctly, that when you spoke before, you're looking more at the program is looking more at what is working and what is not working for restoration projects. And does our approach looking at techniques to monitor what works and what doesn't, does that really fit into what Sea Grant program is wanting, or am I stretching it too far?
Well, Clint, it all depends on what you do with that monitoring data. If it's techniques to improve how you monitor, I think that fits. If it's just collecting a bunch of data on restoration sites, that's a different question altogether. But obviously, efficiencies in how you monitor restoration sites, I think, is a challenge. I think there's a shortage of. I don't think a lot of restoration sites are monitored, and that's largely because funding agencies generally don't provide the support to do long-term monitoring of the restoration site. So we would expect to see some level of monitoring, even in the context of what we were talking about earlier. You'd have to monitor to know how successful it was, but there would need to be an endpoint to that monitoring that could lead to some recommendation on how to improve the restoration.
Okay. Yeah. With things like costs, maybe be an order of magnitude less than the traditional monitoring approach, or being able to monitor seasonally as opposed to, annually or every couple of years. That would be what we would kind of be getting at, and that would be, what we could add to the restoration efforts, and that's something that Sea Grant would accept as. That's what you would accept that approach potentially.
Well, based on what you said, I think so. I mean, if you could come up with a better way of monitoring, a better way in terms of less expensive, more effective way of monitoring, that would then could be used more broadly. I think that while it may not fit under that second bullet that you're talking about, it very well could fit under another bullet. So yeah, if you can improve the way things are currently being done, and I certainly think that fits, but it would need to lead to some way of improving the way people monitor, which then can be used to assess the effectiveness of restoration strategies.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Good. Thank you for that explanation. That's good. And that's kind of what our thrust is that. So, okay. Thank you again. Thank you all for this.
Absolutely, Clint. Thank you.
And I'm going to drop off now, but hope to talk to y'all again soon.
You bet. Thank you.
Hey, there's Megan again.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. I'm trying to, what I saw posted for the focus areas, I could barely very clearly see where we would fit in. But then when I look at the bullet points for the RFP, it kind of covers a few of the different bullet points and it doesn't fit one exactly. Or maybe I'm just misunderstanding some of the verbiage that's used. So for example, under the sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, the very first bullet point of developing adaptive management plans. Let's see here. It says to support fisheries species. Would that include aquaculture, like off-bottom aquaculture, oysters? Or is it just wanting natural, like fisheries? I'm not sure exactly what that's.
I think it could fit aquaculture.
Okay.
It says support fishery species. But, you know, I
It
think-
says oyster reefs, but you know, we're not targeting oyster reefs. We're kind of targeting the off-bottom culture sites.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's see. Predictive modeling.
You know, I can say this, that, you know, all oyster farming sites aren't created equal. So I think the last sentence there, next to last sentence, predict priority locations for siting oyster reefs and other habitats to support fishery species. And I think that could apply with a strong justification to off-bottom aquaculture as well.
Okay. And then there was another what says to improve like best management practices. I think it's under resilient communities and economies. If we do a modeling of a site to then be able to give suggestions on best management practices, would that fit in? Because that would be, in our case, you know, state entities, DMR, versus the private industry who are using those off-bottom culture areas.
Yes, I think, you know, end user certainly could be a state agency as well as a private sector.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
Megan, sorry, Megan, right? I have a niece named Megan.
Yes, sir. No, that's all right.
I may have not heard something you said at the end. It could have been my audio broke up a little bit. Did you have another comment after my response?
I don't think so. I was just, I think saying thank you.
Megan, do you mind if I ask where you're located?
USM, so University of Southern Mississippi on the coast.
Great.
So I work really closely with the off-bottom culture leases and more hatchery operations. But we're trying to pinpoint a need that has been identified by the industry out the farmers with storm prep more specifically. So we're just trying to see if this fits into that.
Well, clearly that was highlighted as an issue this past summer. Both with
Yes.
Zeta and Sally.
Yes, yes. And just because I think that site is a little bit atypical for what the normal storm prep is. It's not as effective there for one reason or another.
You're talking about Deer Island?
Yes, sir. And so we want to be able to tell them with some certainty what the best management practice out there for storm prep is, or at least build towards that.
Yeah, it is a lot to move around in preparation for a storm in relatively deep water.
Right. And I think how the storm surge comes in, it's, you know, just simply sinking cages hasn't been effective. They still had some loss when those farmers that sunk cages, they had just as much or more loss to those that didn't sink a cage.
Yeah, I heard some of the cages wound up on the breakwater they have south of there.
Yeah, I think they kind of ended up everywhere. There was no one area where they congregated. It was all across the coast. Deer Island, they washed up, and we had some in the piers that we go by at our campus, and spread everywhere.
I think the industry definitely wants to avoid marine cages becoming marine debris. I don't know about
Yes.
Mississippi and Alabama. I don't think farmers are required to tag their cages. Do you know if they are in Mississippi?
Yes, out at the site, each cage should be tagged, and then they suggest that bags are tagged as well.
Mhm.
But the ones that we found either lost tags or didn't have them.
Isn't that
Hard
the way
to-
it always is?
Yep. Okay. Well, I think that answered, and I may send you another email just to kind of confirm some of those the focus areas and priorities.
That sounds good.
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Have a good weekend.
You too.
All right, I'm going to turn off the record button here, I think. Oh, there it is.
Loretta, how come you look so good